Hello, Strength Matters. Welcome to Whiteboard Wednesday, an opportunity for us to offer as much as we can in terms of training concepts and training principles to help you become the best version of yourself. I'm Scott.
And I'm Phil. Today we are going to talk about the components that make up complete fitness or complete athleticism. And by that we mean the components that make up your ability to carry out daily tasks, daily exercise in the most efficient, athletic way. What we're going to have up here, a whole bunch of words. If we were to be as basic and simple as possible, I think we could pretty much sum up all the components that make up complete athleticism in these four here.
We have strength, we have mobility, we have conditioning, and we have speed, which is a great foundational concept. And when you're dealing with the category that in our last episode we defined as pre-athletic, this is going to be your starting point to evaluate and program, whether it's for yourselves or for clients you have. But that being said, we as an everyday athlete, we actually have a broad array of what we get involved in. We're in a new movement culture in today, and we here at Strength Matters are really pushing people to develop themselves in so many different ways. So we're going to move beyond the foundational concept and really talk about the many different components of athleticism that are valuable for the everyday athlete and valuable for being healthy and strong in their lives.
Our goal is to basically eliminate as many of these as we can, but leave enough so that it accurately covers everything. So start with a little bit of grouping, or maybe start from the bottom. Focus and intent.
To direct your mental energy, that can be a high-level addition to maybe your movement, your intent to go farther, your intent to lift more. Sometimes the body responds from that mental cue of going beyond what you think you're capable of.
Focus, your ability to focus in on the goal at hand, focus in on the technical points to whatever lift you're about to perform. These are something that we're actually trying to help you with over the coming series. So I think we'll get rid of these two because
we're going to talk about them down the line.
These are kind of an end product, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so breathing. Okay, yeah, do you want to?
Yeah, so breath and breathing is something we take for granted, but something that can dramatically increase athletic performance. So it's definitely a skill and the conversations we're going to have, because it feeds into so many other things. Our ability for our cardiovascular capacity. Breathing can actually increase someone's accuracy or motor control, and it can help us stabilize the trunk. But for now, we're going to take it off the board as we narrow in on our list of components of athleticism.
Flexibility basically means it is your ability to, or the measurable ability to reach a range of motion through it in a joint. The difference between flexibility and mobility is the ability to control the movement through that full range, reaching that end range of motion. Stability kind of falls under motor control, but stability is the ability to, or the body awareness to know where that end range of motion is, and the ability to guide the joint through the path that it should take. Make sense? That's stability.
Yeah.
So, we had a lengthy discussion earlier about which of these to get rid of or keep. We think that mobility covers flexibility and stability, but for the purpose of kind of measuring, somebody might be highly flexible, have very low levels of stability, and vice versa. So for that reason, we're getting rid of mobility. Motor control, I would say, is the umbrella word that covers basically everything to do with nervous system control. It covers stability, it covers balance, covers coordination, covers accuracy. So that's a little bit too broad. I think that accuracy is kind of coordination to a certain degree. So just get rid of accuracy.
Take that off the board.
I think balance and coordination can go onto the same line.
Yeah, so they're really going to be included together in future conversations. However they're defined, they work incredibly well together.
Do you think it's fair to take off motor control, leaving balance and coordination and stability?
Absolutely.
Next.
So we have endurance up on the top. I've worked with endurance athletes for almost 2 decades. That's a whole new scene in America, but anyone who can run a marathon is doing well on the endurance level. But it's really that capacity to go for a long time with whatever it is you're doing. That's going to be, without a doubt, one of the components of athleticism.
Yeah. By endurance, we also mean muscular endurance, which is the ability to repeatedly contract a muscle over and over again over an extended period of time. So, got endurance. Endurance. Still, going for a 2-hour walk. That's endurance, right?
Absolutely.
Posture.
Right.
Although we think that posture affects everything, and so if you have a good posture, then that's to a certain degree a component of athleticism. We think that posture is more affected by everything else. So by ticking all of these other boxes, then you'll actually change your posture over time for the better.
Yeah.
So given that posture is more of an effect, even though it does affect everything, but it's kind of the core. It is the cause, but it's also the outcome. Then we'll get rid of posture. Body composition.
Right. So it's what a lot of people want, more or less. Less is more. And there's a lot of performing artists that require very specific body compositions, a lot of competitions that even weigh in. So is it relevant to athleticism? Yes. But in terms of our conversation for the key components of defining the everyday athlete, I don't think we'll keep it up on the board.
Yeah, I think again it's an end outcome of managing all of these other things. It's just like a periphery rather than like a key component. So body composition. Mental toughness. I've met some people who are pretty good at a lot of things, but they'll turn up and they'll have no mental toughness whatsoever. I think that if this is missing, then the path to athleticism is incredibly hampered.
I'll share my background. I grew up with migraines. I actually dealt with a lot of suffering early on, and I pulled out of all sports and athleticism. So there was a time period where I had very little strength, very little endurance or power, but I still had that motivation, that internal drive when I studied martial arts or when I went after the things that I wanted. So even when I was the last, I still had that mental toughness to help me show up and keep pushing.
Agility, by definition, is the ability to move quickly from one movement pattern to another in an efficient manner. So agility ties in with speed, power and speed. Now, I come from an endurance background, and power and speed are something that they're certainly my weakest points. I was having a hard time kind of differentiating the difference between power and speed, because speed is power, right? I mean, power is the ability to move mass quickly. So power is speed in the presence of mass. So can't we just get rid of speed and keep power and agility, and that pretty much covers everything? But then Scott came up with a nice little diagram.
Yeah, so just talking about this power and speed dynamic, I'm going to use a linear line here to talk about a 100-meter dash. Whether we do it as a kid, whether the Olympics are doing it. And the problem with language is that it can mean several different things at once. But if we're looking at the blast-off phase, like a rocket, but in this case like the sprinter, the first 30 to 40 yards is going to be what really is the power phase of launching themselves off the ground and generating enough power and force to hit their maximum speed or maximum velocity. So speed is so often defined loosely as, well, how long did it take to get from A to B? But it also can represent the fastest portion of the movement, of the sprint, of the quickness. So power and speed can be talked about in different ways, but I think it's great to just lay it out there.
Yeah. So to clarify, speed is the ability to move quickly in a linear fashion.
Yeah.
Power is the ability to reach speed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And power is certainly speed in the presence of mass. So whether that means lifting weights or moving your body quickly.
Yeah.
Strength, the ability to create force. We're going to go into this in a lot more detail soon, but in a future Whiteboard Wednesdays. But everybody needs strength. I didn't even know what strength really meant until after I left the Marines and became a fitness professional. Strength was like this thing. What does it even mean? But yeah, strength is a key quality. So we'll keep that, but we'll go into it in a lot more detail. Cardiovascular capacity. So, although we're trying to keep these as simple as possible and we don't want to scare anyone off with any big words, cardiovascular capacity was about as simple a terms as because cardiovascular capacity basically means your body's ability to produce oxygen and send it to the working muscles. So it's basically how efficient your heart and lungs are at working. Kind of ties in with endurance, but is not the same. It's VO2 max, so oxygen uptake, so you can take the VO2 bit off. But I think cardiovascular capacity is an essential component that makes up complete athleticism. So we are left with 10.
So we have 10 components of athleticism, and we're going to, up in our next video, we're going to talk about the 7 human movement patterns. But going forward, this is going to be our framework and umbrella to really talk about how different movements can be programmed or can be critical for people. And I think that's a good place to wrap up. Do you want to offer anything else?
Well, I was just going to say that Scott and I were talking about this for about an hour before we started filming.
Yeah.
You could geek out for hours with other fitness professionals. I'm sure that anybody watching this has their own opinions, and we'd love to hear them. If you think that we're way off on anything, then please say. But for all intents and purposes, we'll probably just stick with these. But yeah, look forward to delving into them in more detail as the weeks go on.
Brilliant.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.